We would be honored.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers, where we have one of the greatest and longest friends of the show on this evening or afternoon. What is it?
It doesn't really matter.
I haven't seen the sun go down yet.
Somebody's listening to us somewhere at 3 in the morning, and yes, I'm calling you out specifically. Thank you.
Yes. We have author Dan Willis on the show with us.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, Dan has been here 2009 was the first time.
The first time,
yes.
And,
And,
and delighted to be back. I've been here a few times since then.
And back when we did the Gamer Forge, Dan is the one that convinced everyone that Lionel is much better than Boba Fett because he's blind. Because he gets beat by a blind guys.
Very interesting.
I think we're getting booted out.
We might be getting booted out.
That's going to be a...
Oh, we're okay. We're okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We got the okay.
Oh, okay.
Do they know that he is going to be coming to take the room in 40 minutes?
No, but I'm going to
might be
let
why
someone
the
else
toes were okay.
solve that problem because I don't care.
Should we
Okay.
should we
Past
start
the
over?
point of caring.
No. I mean, we got a good. Just give it like a 2 seconds of silence and pick up again.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Yes, go ahead. I don't know where to go.
Well, we're talking about how awesome Dan Wells is and how many
Yes.
times he's been on the show.
Yes, Dan Wells is
Yes.
awesome. Been on the show many
Well,
times.
thank you. You're also awesome. I'm
Thank
happy to be
you.
back.
We appreciate that.
I mean, I'm all right, but Dungeon Crawlers is great.
Yeah,
100%
You're my favorite one.
Oh, thank you. Well, I am kind of a dice fairy today, but, I'll take it.
I don't know where to go
Jeez.
with that one. I've been
You
here the
teaser.
longest, and he's the favorite now? He's
Well,
the
you-
youngest out of all
here's
of
the
us.
thing, Dan.
Give me
Alton's
any
not on the
free
show
dice.
as a regular anymore.
See, here's the thing, Dan. As you alluded to so obtusely in our panel yesterday, I am the young, attractive model of the group.
Oh.
Yes, this is true, actually.
That's
Wow.
definitely how I make all my decisions.
Yes. From the attractive models.
For legal purposes, that was a joke.
Yes, because if you look up Dan Wells, you will find a model.
Yes, you will.
So, Dan, gotta
Yes.
ask, how's the convention going for you so far?
It's going really well. It is. We are selling hand over fist,
Which is awesome.
I'm in the Bard's Tower booth with a ton of other authors, and sold out of a bunch of titles yesterday. Restocked, sold out of a bunch more today. It's going really well. This is invariably our best-selling show,
Nice.
year over year.
So, knowing that some people are going to be watching this in the future and are going to need to come and pick up the thing that is hot while you're here, what's the hot item that everybody needs to come check out from you?
Well, it depends on when this is going to air and when they're going to find me, right?
Well, they're not going to find you here because obviously today's the last day.
I hope not.
No.
But what is the they're going to go find you on your website.
So
or-
my most recent books have all been Audible originals. They started in audio. The Zero G series, which are middle grade science fiction. The first one is called Zero G, and it's basically Home Alone in space, about a kid that saves a colony ship from a group of space pirates. Netflix just optioned that one.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
to make an
congrats.
animated movie. So we hope that all goes well and that option gets executed, which in this case is a good verb. We also have Ghost Station, which is one of my thrillers, but in this case a historical Cold War espionage thriller. No science fiction, no magic, no robots, just pure historical spies, and it's awesome.
Dude, that is really, really hot.
Sounds amazing.
Well, I think it's amazing. It is my least read book by a country mile. No one looks to Dan Wells for historical fiction, so no. But I like it a lot. Everyone go look it up. More recent than that, non-book-wise, coming out in just a few days, there's a new video game called Moonbreaker. It's from the studio that did Subnautica.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Brandon Sanderson did all the world building, and I am writing all the stories.
Oh,
I
nice.
had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a turn-based miniatures combat game that you play on your computer, and it's really fun. It looks gorgeous, and there's not actually an internal story to it. It's not like a role-playing game that you play. What there is every 6 weeks we release a half-an-hour audio drama with full cast and music and sound effects and everything, and I'm the one writing all of that and guiding the storyline and working really closely with the design team. We've got some really cool stuff coming up that I can't talk about, but the game launch itself is September 29, and it's such a good game, and the stories that we're telling are really cool. So everyone, go buy that game and listen to the stories.
Strong agree. Now, I know that Krebs is normally our video game guy,
Yes.
but in this case, I'm going to say the folks who made Subnautica really do a good job of both building ambient worlds while still paying attention to details that help to fill it out in a really meaningful way. I'm really excited to see what you do with those audio dramas. And
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, first of all, Brandon has been working behind the scenes with the team for a couple of years. And the world he's come up with is very kind of science fantasy. It is a great big star that has an atmosphere. And so there's a bunch of small moons and things that orbit it inside of an atmosphere. And you can fly between them in, open top ships or on the back of creatures and things like that. So it's kind of a Sky Pirates sort of thing. The game itself is all ground-based combat as, different aliens and monsters and things move around, and the art for it's unbelievable. Like, if you've seen Subnautica, you know that they're phenomenal at art, and the way that it all works is great. And it really does feel like a miniatures game. The models that move around are not animated. I mean, they move in an animated way, but it's not.
But they're not articulated.
They're not articulated, yes.
Yeah.
And there's an incredibly robust painting system. And so you can I spend more time painting the models than playing the game, which is also how I do Warhammer and War Machine and all these others, because, they've captured that hobby side of gaming really well. They've done a wonderful job with it.
I totally connect with that. I still have a Necron army fully painted to the nines, has yet to touch the table.
I mean, that's kind of what hobby gaming is about, right? There's different things that you want to do. There's different ways to access it. And you can tell that the people who made Moonbreaker understand that from the inside. They are one of us. They are nerds who know miniatures gaming. And it's just a really cool game.
So without getting too spoilery, what can we kind of expect the tone of that first episode to be?
Oh, man. So the game is kind of centered around captains. You have a captain of a crew. And so the main characters are the captains, and we've got a whole bunch of them that are all, ready to go and part of the story. And Season 1 of the game introduces the first 3 of them. And so the very first episode is about Extilior. Extilior is a death bot, a robot designed only for killing, who has gained consciousness and gained a moral compass. And so now he still looks and acts like a death bot, but he has like an honorable code of chivalry. And he's a really fun character to write, because everyone's always afraid of him, and he sounds so scary. Like we went out of our way to find a voice actor who kind of sounds like Megatron.
Oh, nice.
So like he comes up and he says scary things, but then he is a good guy who is trying to help everyone. So it's kind of funny, and very much a let's just have a cool adventure in space. Once we get deeper into the game, after we introduce the captains, then we get to start, and that's what I'm working on now for Season 2, is the ongoing story. How do these captains all connect to each other, and where is this going? It's got a really rich world, as you can imagine from Brandon doing it, and then this really fun story. We're trying to do like an MCU thing with it, where it's all connected, but the different captains all have different tones to them. So Extilior is kind of this, noble crusading knight, but in a funny way because he's this, death bot. The other 2 Season 1 captains that everyone's going to get to meet right off the bat are Zax, who's like a, Mal Reynolds or Han Solo, space cowboy kind of guy, except he's dead. And so he's very much the scoundrel, roguish Joker type. And then the last one is Astra, who's just like 12 or 13 years old. And with her, we have a totally different tone because it's more of like a YA coming-of-age story. And so the different captains give us an opportunity to tell different kinds of stories with a different vibe to them. So those are the first 3 that you're going to meet.
So I've got one more
Nice.
question, and I want to make sure not to ask too many questions before I let Dan and Krebs get a word in edgewise. But you're writing these roughly half-hour dramas, right? What are some of the unique challenges that you have as a writer to make sure that medium works for you versus a novel where you have the time and the background?
That's a really great question. One thing I am finding is that combat scenes can be very difficult to do in audio. If it was a book, I would be able to describe what's going on. And if it was a movie, you'd be able to see what's going on.
Yeah.
But when all you have are your ears, it becomes very chaotic very quickly if we're not careful about it. And so we have to be very circumspect about when we choose to do fight scenes and how we present them so that the audience can understand what's going on rather than just, okay, now let's listen to blaster bolts for 2 minutes and then we'll get back to the story.
And I imagine it also can't all be, oh man, you nearly missed me there.
Yeah, well, and, there's absolutely some of that, and part of that is a bit of the joke, right? Like you hear these just random call-outs. And sometimes we use the barks, the little things that like the units say in the game when you click on them. You'll hear those in the audio dramas as well, like during a fight. But yeah, too much of that gets old really fast. Yeah. So we're just being very cautious as we figure out the best way to convey combat. But, it's also not all combat. There's a lot of stories and people going through and having, conversations and adventures and mysteries to solve and all this other stuff. So.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I imagine at this point you've had a chance to play some pre-alpha builds and things like that.
I've been playing the game for several months now. Honestly, like I said, I spend most of my time painting rather than playing, but they've done such a wonderful job with it. Really cool stuff. It feels like a miniatures game, but they're taking advantage of the digital aspect, in a way that like Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra does, where it's a card game, but it utilizes the fact that a computer is keeping track of stuff for you to do things that you couldn't actually do easily on a tabletop. So it's kind of a best of both worlds situation.
I looked up the game while we've been talking, and I got to see just a quick video snippet of the painting mechanic. I was really impressed. It looked really good.
They've got a huge color palette for it. They've done like different brush types. You can do a wash, you can do a dry brush, you can do all these other things. They even have a system, and I don't know if this was in the video you watched, where you can select a part of the model. So like if you want to dry brush the gun or something like that, then you can say, okay, activate the gun, and then you just wiggle your mouse all over to dry brush something, and it won't get paint on anything but the one part you've selected.
That's better than real life.
Regardless of what your mouse is over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they've really thought about this. I am so excited to see what the players do once they get a hold of the painting tools.
That's awesome. This game comes out September 29th, and it will be available on Steam.
Correct.
Awesome.
Man.
Do you have any idea what the price point's going to look like?
I don't. I have purposefully avoided all conversations revolving around monetization because I don't have useful input for those, and I don't know. So I can't imagine it's going to be crazy. I know that they're doing some kind of unlocking system similar to a battle pass where you'll be able to get extra little like things. But I have not been deeply involved with any of that, so I don't know what things you can unlock. I know some of them are going to be alternate sculpts, which will part of those will be in Battle Pass, and part of those will be in other areas of the game. But yeah,
Man, it's too bad it's only on Steam. It would be nice if it was on consoles and other game systems.
I suspect that they're probably going to end up bringing it to other platforms, but like I said, that's not a part of the company that I am involved with, so I speak with no authority whatsoever.
So now, are you having a lot of fun with this? Because, I mean, you've gone from when we met you, writing horror thriller novels, to now fantasy and science fiction.
Now doing space fantasy video games.
Yeah. I mean, that's a long leap, but I mean...
I'm still doing
awesome.
everything.
Yeah.
My most recent book that came out was Ghost Station. That's the historical spy thriller. and now I'm doing this space fantasy thing. I've got a bunch of epic fantasy coming up, and the next thing you see from me, novel-wise, is likely to be a return to supernatural horror. So
Nice.
I'm still trying to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
But that's the other big thing we have to announce, and this we talked about this yesterday on Intentionally Blank, so word is out. But the audience at large might not know yet. I am now the vice president of narrative of Dragonsteel.
Oh wow.
I am Brandon Sanderson's one of his vice presidents, and so I'm going to be writing Cosmere books. I'm going to be helping him organize and coordinate the Cosmere storyline and write a bunch of other things that all need to be put together. So that is going to take up most of my time. Dragonsteel and Moonbreaker are going to be most of my energy for the foreseeable future, and then I'm just going to do my best to put out what books I can in the interim.
Dude, congrats, Dan. That is
That's awesome.
really substantial.
I mean, I know you
No,
and Brandon
thank you
have
very
been
much.
friends for a long time, so
Yeah, we have known each other since well before either of us were published.
Yeah.
We kind of came up through this together. He's obviously had wild, insane breakout success, and that's awesome. And we started working together last year. He asked me to co-write Dark One. He put out a graphic novel called Dark One that's a portal fantasy. Basically, there's if Narnia was real and it's trying to kill you, is his pitch for it.
Oh, wow.
A boy from our world finds out, teenage boy, that there's actually a magical world that he can visit, and it's real, and he is the prophesied villain who will destroy it, rather than the hero who will save it. And so that graphic novel came out a couple years ago. We wanted to do a novel of it, and so we have collaborated on that. We finished the first draft. We're working on revisions. We both enjoyed the process so much working together that we decided, let's just formalize this and work together on a bunch of other stuff too. So that's what we're doing.
that's awesome. So with you being vice president of the narrative of the Cosmere pretty much now, will you still have time to write your own stuff, or are you going to be writing stuff in the Cosmere?
I'm going to be writing stuff in the Cosmere and trying to write my own stuff on the side as well. My middle grade series, 0G, Netflix is buying that,
Nice.
like I said earlier. And so that is not the time for me to abandon my own work.
Yeah.
I need to keep putting out more. I would like to write more 0G stories. I would like to do a middle grade fantasy series. There's a lot of things that I want to do. Like I said, I've got a supernatural horror that I want to put out. Just so many things, and so little time to do it all. So
Yes.
Brandon is hiring me. I feel like I should hire another person to write all my books while I write all Brandon's books. And then we'll see how far that domino goes.
Well, I mean, as far as like Brandon, he's been writing like crazy, but it's like, okay, how much time do you have? So bringing you on, I mean, he already knows your writing style. He knows the talent you have. I mean, that's got to make things move a little bit faster.
Yeah. Well, and it seems crazy, the guy who had enough time to write 4 extra novels last year
I know. Well,
suddenly
5.
decides
Yeah.
that he can't write fast enough and needs more people.
Yeah.
But the Cosmere is huge.
Yeah, it is.
The Cosmere is a massive project. It needs more than one person working on it. And so that's what we're going to do. And we've already got some ideas that are so cool and so crazy.
That's awesome.
Some of which will be novels, some of which will be other weird mediums coming out. So, yeah.
It's
gonna be
it
great.
sounds like the Cosmere is starting to turn into the galaxy far, far away.
Well, the first thing you see from Brandon and I together, the first collaboration, is called Dark One Forgotten. And you can think of it as a prequel to Dark One, but it isn't really because Dark One hasn't come out yet. It comes out in January,
Okay.
and unless it gets bumped. But right now the plan is January. It is a 6-episode fake true crime podcast. We are telling the story of a girl in college who starts doing an amateur podcast about this mysterious disappearance. And over the course of the podcast episodes, she uncovers this supernatural monster that's at the heart of it. And that is kind of the intro into Dark One. Dark One is about the boy from our world who goes into a fantasy land, and the evil sorcerer from Fantasyland who comes into our world and becomes a serial killer here. So you can see why there's a lot of overlap between Brandon and Dan. And it was a good project for us both to work on. But this little intro series, it's a 6-episode, each of them is an hour long. And it was so fun to write in that medium, as if it were a podcast. And so it's not going to be an audiobook. It's going to actually sound like a podcast with, actors reading all the lines, and I wrote all the scripts for that, and that comes out in June. Dark One Forgotten.
Now, the really cool thing is if somehow he slips in Hoyd and you slip in John Cleaver. Because it seems like that's it's a mashup of those two.
Well, the one character that both he and I have used at different points is Cecil G. Bagsworth III.
Okay.
Who is an archivist. And he has appeared in the Alcatraz series, and he has appeared in my Night of Blacker Darkness, my vampire novel.
Yeah.
So,
okay, that's awesome.
He's bound to make a return at some point.
He's got to. That would be awesome.
Okay, so admittedly, and I've heard your name a million times. I know that you're like a prolific and profound author, but admittedly, I have not yet started any of your works myself. So as someone who has not read Dan Wells, what's the first book I should read out of your entire pantheon of work?
Well, that depends on if you lean toward horror or science fiction.
Yes. No, I happen to be like
not helpful at all.
I happen to be like I think of the three of us, I might be the biggest horror fan, but that's debatable.
Okay.
No,
that's
not debatable.
You make
okay,
it.
No,
right.
yeah, it's Krebs.
I'm the horror guy. We all love sci-fi. I love sci-fi. So I'm open to either of those sort of like realms of work. What would you suggest for the very first thing I read?
Okay, so my first novel is 14 years later, still my most successful novel. It's the most famous one. It's the one that got made into a movie. It is called I Am Not a Serial Killer.
We were just talking about that yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
It sounds fascinating.
It's awesome, and you should read it.
I should read that. Who wrote that?
Oh, man, some dude.
Some dude that got drug
dude
out of the
much
forest.
younger than I am.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, he. So John Cleaver is a sociopath. He, 15 years old at the start of the first book, lives with his mother over the mortuary that they run, and he is, as all well-adjusted people are, obsessed with death and serial killers.
Of course.
And because he has these sociopathic tendencies, he suspects and worries that he might be turning into a serial killer. So he sets rules to keep himself from hurting anybody. Then a supernatural monster comes to his town and starts bumping people off, and he has to break all of his rules one by one in order to find him and stop him.
I love this.
It's the first of a 6-book series.
Nice.
It was made into a movie starring Christopher Lloyd. There is a production company shopping it around really heavily right now for TV series. I cannot tell you who, but there is an actor whose work you are very familiar with, who read the book and told his agent he wants to be John Cleaver. And so that has kind of put all of the production into high gear. There's still no contracts. There's still not a studio. It's still not a thing. But now that there is a star interested in the property, that makes things go a lot faster in Hollywood. And so we are hoping that something comes of it. We'll see.
Well, I mean, the really cool thing, I remember when you were doing the movie, is the individual that created the creature actually played young Toby from Labyrinth, the baby.
Yeah.
That's right, because his
Toby
parents,
Froud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toby Froud, who played Toby in Labyrinth, whose father, Brian Froud, was the production designer, did all of the Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. Toby Froud now works for Leica Studios in Oregon, that does all the claymation, and he was the special effects designer on my movie, I Am Not a Serial Killer.
Yeah.
That is
Very
fabulous.
cool.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
It's great. The special effects in that movie are all practical effects. I've had some people tell me that the CG in the very last scene where you see the monster is sloppy, and I'm like, that's not CG, that's a puppet. Like, I've seen that puppet. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, in fact, the the guy who was on set running the special effects, because Toby designed them, and then this other guy ran them. He was also one of the Muppeteers that worked on Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and stuff. And
That's
I
awesome.
now, off the top of my head, can't remember his name, and I feel really badly about that because he was my best friend on set. We hung out the whole 10 days that I was on set. I was basically spent with him, and he's wonderful. And as soon as I remember his name, I will apologize. But so it was a fun project to be a part of.
Very cool.
When you're brought on to consult something like that, I mean, of course, like you've sold the option to make this film. You've sold the rights in that regard.
Yeah.
So they have a certain level of control that is now out of your hands.
Yes.
But they also bring you on as a consultant in the hopes that maybe they do it some justice and that they also don't end up in like a weird, awkward relationship thereafter. But
Well, to be clear, the vast majority of authors do not get brought on as consultants
No, they do not.
for the movies that they work on. And in fact, I did not have any level of official control.
that's right.
I had become, over the course of the 6 years that it took the director to raise the money to make the movie, because it was a very small indie production, I became very good friends with the director. His name is Billy O'Brien. He's an Irish horror film director who's fantastic. And so, just because we're friends, he invited me to come and spend some time on set and talk to the actors and stuff, and it was great. But I had no actual official consulting anything. So,
Okay, so you were there on set, but you had no official capacity. But
Yeah.
because you were friends with the director, did you have some sway?
I mean, to some degree. Basically,
More than zero, less than.
sway is a good word to use. But, for example, I did not like the script because, in hindsight, I did not understand filmmaking very well. He changed the ending in a way that I was convinced was not going to work. It's an ending that I had initially tried in the novel, and it did not work. And once and so I told him, and I wrote this huge thing to him, and then I talked to him in person. I'm like, dude, this script is not going to work. Trust me, the ending won't work. And he said, listen, movies are different than books. The book ending would not work as a movie. My movie ending would not work as a book, but they are right for the format they're in. And once I saw the final product, he was absolutely right.
Oh, that's great news.
The changes that he made that I tried to talk him out of were good changes that made it a better movie. And so, it's a good thing in that case that I didn't have any control over it. But, like on set, I was able to talk to Christopher Lloyd, to Max Records, to some of the other actors that came on, and they would say, well, how should I do this? Or how should I play this? Or, and I was able to give really valuable advice there. I also talked quite a bit to Toby and to Billy about the design of the monster and things like that. So there was definitely a lot of input, and I was able to occasionally persuade them towards things. But they are good enough artists to stand their ground when I was wrong about something.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they did.
So how does that experience and those experiences, right, how does that inform the way that you now write different kinds of media and how you sell or work with other people on different kinds of media? Because I imagine there has to have been like a lot of little things that, just like how you sit and you write 100 books and then all of a sudden the 101st it kind of clicks.
Yeah. So, I have always said that I am not interested in an exact adaptation of something, right? I don't want to see a movie that is just an exact reproduction of the book because I've already read the book.
Yeah.
That's why so many of the Harry Potter movies are very boring, because they didn't bring anything new to it. They're just reproducing slavishly the book we've all already read. Some of the Harry Potter movies are fantastic because they are like, no, this is a new thing. I'm going to put my own stamp on it. That attitude was sorely tested when it was my baby being adapted. But at the other end of this process, having seen what it was all like, having seen the final product, I am much more likely now, to write what I know is best for the book without an eye for adaptation at all. Knowing that if it turns into a different format, they will make the changes they need to make, means that I don't have to think about that in advance. I don't have to think to myself, well, if this became a TV show, would I need this kind of character? That's a meaningless question to ask when you're writing a book. And so I do the best that I can for the format that I am writing for, whether that is a novel or a video game or an audio script or whatever. And then B, I trust the adapters. Work with good people who are good at what they do and let them do what they're good at and don't get in their way. And that is the best way to collaborate on art, in my opinion.
Absolutely love it. And I mean, Dan has certainly consumed a lot more of your work than we have.
All of it.
I know that for a fact because you're a name who regularly comes up off camera all the time.
Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
But nevertheless, I can say that the very limited view that I have into your work, I do feel a sense of, and it feels weird to say it this way, but almost like artistic maturity, of an understanding of your medium. It's the difference between a photo of the Mona Lisa and seeing the Mona Lisa in person, right? There are little subtle things that only come with experience and time, and even sometimes hitting your head against the wall until you miss.
Yeah.
But for any of you that are have been wondering whether this is something that you should consider or not, I'm going to say, go. Take some sampling. See what you can do to bring back in your own works, because, Dan, you got it.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. But before we do that, we're handing it over to Krebs for the lightning round.
Yes, because I've never had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Wells, and so we've never done the lightning round.
What is the lightning round?
It's really not that big a deal, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm just going to lob you some very easy questions, usually just off the top of my head, and I would ask that you just give me whatever answer comes to mind right away. It's really fast. It's rapid fire. It's fun.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Okay.
All right, here we go. What's your favorite color?
Green.
What's your favorite food?
Chiles rellenos.
Are you a...
Which sucks because I'm lactose intolerant.
Con queso. No,
Yeah.
Are you a pet person?
No.
No.
I own 2 dogs, and I love them. But when at some point in the future they pass away from natural causes, I will be very sad, and I will not get any more. Because I am not a pet person, and I want to have kids by that point. So there we go.
Are you an outdoor type person or like a city life type person?
I am both. I love to go camping. I used to go backpacking all the time, but now I'm old and out of shape. But also, I love cities. I love big cities. And so I'm kind of everything.
For the record, Dan Willis is in better shape than any of us. And finally, what is your stance on the 1983 sci-fi fantasy film Krull?
Oh, man. I have not seen Krull in forever. It has been a very long time. But my stance on it at the time was, wow, this is amazing. They should make more movies like this. Yes! Which I hold to. I think that we need more fantasy movies in general, more fantasy TV shows. So
Awesome.
Fantastic.
And that ends the lightning round.
It
All
does.
right.
It's over.
Where can our listeners find your stuff?
Okay, so look for The Dan Wells. That is my website. That is my Twitter handle. That is everywhere you can find me. Also, listen to Writing Excuses, which is the podcast that I do for aspiring writers. Listen to Intentionally Blank, which is the podcast that I do with Brandon Sanderson. And sign up for my newsletter. Go to thedanwells.com, sign up for that, and you'll get monthly reminders of how much you want to buy all my books.
Awesome. All right,
Sounds
folks.
amazing.
So go out, buy Dan's stuff. It is amazing, as everyone has already attested. I always talk about Dan. But with that said, we'll catch you next time.
And Dungeon Crawlers, tell your story, whatever may come.
And always remember to be epic like Dan Wells and don't suck.
Dungeon Crawlers, because we had such an amazing event at Salt Lake FanX, we have tons of content that we're going to be pushing your way. And here's another great interview that we got while at FanX, and this is brought to you by Matai. He was able to sit down with author Dan Willis and get some information about the novels he's writing.
Hello, Dungeon Crawlers. Matai here with another mini crawl, and today I am speaking with
Dan Willis.
Dan Willis. You're a local author with a number of different series in your body of work. You want to tell us about them?
Sure. I started writing for Wizards of the Coast about 2000, 2004, somewhere in that range. And I wrote, they had a young adult series called Dragonlance: The New Adventures. I wrote 3 books for them, and then I wrote for a series called The Anvil of Time. I wrote a book for that. And lately, I have been writing fantasy detective noir stories, mostly because Jim Butcher got divorced and stopped writing books for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And I didn't have anything to scratch that particular itch, so I decided I'm going to write my own. So I took a detective and set him in the 1930s and gave him a little magic power and wrote some good mysteries.
Yeah, someone's got to fill that niche because, urban fantasy, wizard detectives. I am a big fan of the Dresden Files, and hearing about this really got me interested. But this isn't just contemporary Chicago. This is 20s and 30s. Where's he set?
It's set in New York, mostly on Manhattan. And if you, I had a fan actually dig up a picture of New York in the 30s, and it looks very different than it does today. A lot of little houses where there are now skyscrapers. So.
Right. So if someone were looking at your book, what would you say are some of the differences between Butcher's Dresden and your detective?
Well, Harry is a full-on wizard. He's got a lot of really nifty powers, and he's a heavy hitter in the magical community. In my series, there are 3 different types of magic. There's sorcery, there's rune rites, and there's alchemy. And these are all out. People on the street go to an alchemist shop for a remedy for a cold, that kind of thing. And sorcerers are very rare, and they're basically like Greek gods. They're a lot of power, not a lot of oversight. And in most countries, they're required to work for the government. In America, they're not, so lots of sorcerers congregate in America where they're basically like industrialists. They use their magic on high power things that earn them lots of money. And then there are the rune rites. The rune rites are guys with little powers, hedge wizards. They've got the ability to write symbols that have magical power, and they can do very minor things like fix broken things or keep the rain off of you or dry things out. It's very utilitarian, and it's all patriarchal, or not patriarchal, but family-based. So a rune rite would only pass their knowledge on to one of their children, unless they didn't have any children, in which case they might take an apprentice. And so different rune rites know different things. And so my character, Alex Lockerbie, he's a rune rite, and he's been trained as a detective, and he uses his skills to do things like put things back together that have been broken or torn up at a crime scene, or find things that were written on a notepad 3 or 4 pages above where it's been torn off, and things like that he can find evidence that are beyond the police, and then find criminals the police can't catch.
Wouldn't today's CSI and investigators love to have some magic at their disposal to do just that?
Well, so that somebody in the 1930s, what CSI do today would be magic. That's kind of the idea I had was, what if it was a CSI but set before we knew how to lift fingerprints off of certain substances or how to find DNA or things like that. And so there's a good deal of detective work. I had a guy once describe it, says, yeah, his detective uses magic, but most of the time he solves his crime by good old-fashioned legwork. And so it's very much a mystery, and magic doesn't usually solve the crimes, but it plays a big role in it, and there's a deep, mysterious world that's kind of unseen that over the course of the books is being revealed, and that's kind of my overarching storyline. And we'll get to that when we get to it. So. Yeah,
and this is quite a long series, not just a trilogy. There's, you said 9 books in the series?
Yeah, the 9th book, which is called Hidden Voices, comes out on next Tuesday, which is the 27th of September. And people are like, are you going to stop writing these anytime soon? Because I love them. And I'm like, I'm going to keep writing them as long as people keep reading them. Although there is a definite ending in mind. And World War II is 1938 currently. And so 1939 in September is when World War II really starts. Hitler's already invaded Austria at this point. But there was no conflict, so that wasn't considered a war. It was just like Austria, like, we give up. But and so they're dealing with the aftermath of that, and there's a lot of political tension because that's what actually happened in that time period. So it's going to be very interesting as the war ramps up, and Alex may end up in Europe doing some things, and there's lots of fun places I can take this. I'm excited to get there.
So would you consider this urban fantasy overlaid on actual history or alternate history? Are you going to take some deviations from where our timeline went?
Well, there's already deviations because of the fact that magic exists, that sorcerers exist. In Manhattan, the way that people live, where people live, is radically changed from the real world because one of the sorcerers, a guy named Andrew Barton, created a wireless power apparatus that he then bought the Empire State Building, and that entire building is a power generator, and it projects wireless power over the island. And it kind of projects it in this parabola shape that goes, across. So Central Park has great power. You got great reception. Think of it as like a radio station. But the further you get away from that oval shape, the worse your power reception is. So there's the core, which is right on Empire Tower, which is what it's called, and all the rich people live around there. And then you have the inner ring, the mid ring, and the outer ring, and those describe your power reception. So outer ring doesn't get much power. A lot of them are still on Edison Electric. And so you've got things like that change the way the world works in ways that mean that some things that happened in the real world probably wouldn't happen in this world. So it's alternate history. Urban fantasy technically is anything after 1900. So it's technically urban fantasy, but I always describe it as fantasy detective noir because it paced the era into people's mind. You know, it's the Art Deco era and all that great stuff where I just love the Art Deco era. I could go on for a long time about that, so I won't.
Awesome. That sounds so interesting. So Alex Lockerbie is the main character of the Arcane Casebook, but some of these books have perspectives from some of the other supporting characters. Can you describe some of them?
Yeah, I have a companion series called The Arcane Irregulars, and I wrote that because my readers demanded that I do it. I kept getting, hey, can we get a story with the FBI agent Buddy Redhorn? Can we get his cop, Alex's cop friend's a guy named Danny Pack on the police force? Can we get stories with those guys? And so I put together a story that kind of brought those people together after book 6 of the main series, because in book 6, Alex was out of town. And so I was like, this is a perfect time to jump in and tell some other stories. And my readers really liked it, so I'm actually starting right after this convention that we're at. I'm going to start writing book 2 in that series, which I think is called Shadows of Anubis, but I'm not sure. Titles are funny things. They are in flux. The first book was called Curse of the Phoenix. These are much more pulpy than my main stuff. I haven't got a story with a voodoo priest yet, but I'm sure I can work that in. But
coming soon. You heard it here first on Dungeon Crawlers Radio. Maybe. So Dan, where can people find your books?
I'm pretty much exclusive to Amazon, but you can get my books in audio, Kindle, in physical paperback, and in hardback. So this latest book, Hidden Voices, the audiobook, because the audiobook takes longer to produce, it will not be out until January, but it is. I've already got the narrator. I'm in his queue, and it'd be December if he hadn't gotten COVID and been out for 3 weeks. But things happen. But so if you're an audiobook reader, if visually impaired people, the audiobook's coming. It'll be here in January.
And how about your website and social media?
You can reach me at danwillisauthor.com. Real easy. I have a prequel book there you can download for free. Again, if you're audio, there is an audio for it. You have to buy that one from me. It's $5. So
not bad at all.
Audiobooks are expensive. I try to make this one as cheap as possible. And so all that stuff's available out there. You can get signed books out there if you feel like having me scribble on a book for you. Be happy to do it.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. This series sounds interesting. I'm going to go read it right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good one.
So, Dungeon Crawlers, remember to be epic and don't suck. And tell your story, whatever may be. And know that we will be continuing to put out more fantastic, great interviews from FanX over the next few days. You'll be finding some really cool, what we call mini crawls that will be coming your way. And stay tuned, because there's more exciting stuff coming. We'll catch you next time.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Dungeon Crawlers.